Last week on MCrider, we watched live footage as some riders at Sturgis 2020 were having trouble handling their motorcycle at slow speeds. Well, this week we'll talk about why they were struggling, why it's important, and what the fix is to be able to handle a motorcycle at slow speeds. Hey, my name's Kevin, and I release a weekly video here on MCrider focused on road skills or road strategy to help you become a better rider. So let's take a virtual ride over to one of my old practice locations. And I want to show you where I used to frequently work on slow speed control skills. I used to come here frequently, in fact, when I was trying to hone my riding skills. And it's been quite a few years since I practiced in this location. I'd already been riding for a lot of years when I started practicing here, but I still had a lot to learn about riding a motorcycle correctly. Back when I used to practice in this parking lot, there were not many other buildings around here. This area was pretty vacant back then, and this building was brand new and was still unoccupied, so I had the entire lot to myself. So none of those trucks that you see back there were there at that time. I'd use that back lot for cornering and emergency braking, and I'd work on slow speed skills there as well. After some time, I saw this side access road and thought this would be the perfect place to continue working on my U-turns. So let's go in and take a closer look at that area. Do you see a problem with this practice area, especially if you're still learning to master the U-turn? It has curbs on either side. It seemed like a good idea at the time because it would force me to get the U-turns in a tight pattern, but I soon found out why it would be better to practice on an open parking lot. I had completed several U-turns in this area. In fact, I think this was probably my second day practicing on this little side road, but one of the U-turns I ended up a little wide on the exit, and as I was rounding the U-turn, I saw that I wasn't going to make it through the turn. Well, how did I know that? Well, that was my first mistake. I was looking at the curb. So now that I'm staring at the curb, and I was sure to hit it now because I was looking at it, I made my second mistake. I used the front brake to try to avoid the curb. Well, you can guess what happened next. I was over on my side before I even realized what happened. And you've heard me tell in other videos that the quickest way I know of to drop a motorcycle is to use the front brake at slow speeds with the handlebars at full turn. Not only have I seen this time and time again as an MSF instructor, but I've also experienced it myself even before I became an instructor. If you want to drop your motorcycle, all you have to do is grab that front brake at slow speeds with the handlebars turned. I think we can scientifically prove this one because it's repeatable time and time again. So a quick word of advice, not only from a rider coach, but also from a rider who was in the same position you are at one time. Use a wide open parking lot to develop your slow speed skills. And whatever you do, don't grab the front brake at slow speeds with the handlebars turned. You can just trust me on this one. So last week, when we were pointing out some of the obvious mistakes that riders were making at Sturgis, it wasn't to make fun of them because I've done the same kinds of things. We all have. The shame's not in making a mistake. The shame's not in learning from your mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes we saw at Sturgis was the lack of slow speed control. Well, how do we know that they didn't have slow speed control? Because their feet were sticking out like giant outriggers trying to keep the canoe from rolling over sideways in the river. Outriggers work great on canoes, but they're not necessary for riding a motorcycle. The proper technique, however, is necessary. So the proper technique, what is that? Keeping your head and eyes up, looking where you want to go, using the clutch in the friction zone, using slight pressure on the rear brake will help control the speed and give that rear tire something to drive against, which will also help with the balance and a steady throttle. So if you need to turn at slow speed, you'll want to add turning your head in the direction of the turn. Now, this will be a much further and much sooner than what will feel naturally when you first start doing this. So if I was going to make a U-turn right now, I want to get that head and eyes as far into that U-turn as I possibly can, and that feels really odd at first. And you can add to that counterweighting. So if I'm turning to the left, I'm going to turn my head and eyes to the left, but I'm going to shift my body weight over to the right. So the goal here on MC Rider is never to poke fun at other riders, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't point out obvious mistakes in technique. The problem is often a lack of knowledge or a lack of training and a lack of follow-up training on a motorcycle. So my advice for new riders is to get initial training, start on a manageable motorcycle, and then follow up that training in about a year with some more advanced training, or if you can't find that, take the same new rider class again in a year. You'll learn something the second time. I've taken it multiple times, and I've learned something every time I've taken it. Add to that resources like MC Rider and the field guide and the forums that'll keep proper technique at the top of mind, and you can practice those techniques on your own. That will greatly reduce the risk of being involved in a collision, or at least being able to ride down the road without dragging your feet on the ground. So a quick summary of what we discussed in this video. If you look at the curb, you'll hit the curb. I know, I've done it. Don't grab the front brake at slow speeds with the handlebars turned. You'll drop the motorcycle. I know, I've done it. Find a parking lot to practice, somewhere with plenty of runoff room where you can run wide if you need to. Learn the proper technique of slow speed control and practice it. That's the key, not just listening to this video, but going out and practicing it. Practice with your head and eyes, your clutch in the friction zone. Use that rear brake and counterweight in the turn. Do a search either on YouTube or on MCrider.com and search for the words MC Rider Slow Speed Control, and you'll find a whole list of other videos that can help explain things further and give you specific training exercises that you can work on as well. Till next week, guys, it's Kevin with MC Rider, and I'll see you on the road.